Hello, Eric.
Hi.
This is our lockdown lesson. I think it's number 32, which is incredible, really.
Yeah.
It's been a lot of content the last few weeks, and I've wanted to do these lockdown lessons because I know some amazing people. Eric Pye is right at the top of that tree of amazing people.
You're too kind.
And some people who know a shed load about their expertise. So that's why I wanted to bring all these experts on to be able to teach us something we can do during lockdown. And one of the things I've noticed is everybody's out with their phones and sometimes with their cameras trying to get great pictures of their kids and sometimes failing. And so what we can do is, what you can do for us, hopefully, is give us some really good tips, practical tips to get the best out of our cameras. Because just explain exactly what it is that you do, Eric, because you wear a few hats, don't you?
I do, yes. And for a long time, my hat was a primary school teacher. But I had enough of that, shall we say. I moved into mostly into photography. I do that semi-professionally. But I also work for a shop in Ambleside, in the outdoor business, and do lots of little odd jobs and things. But from my photography, I do that. I do my own personal photography. I sell that at art fairs and things like that. But I also teach photography for the brewery here in Kendal, and the private group and one-to-one tuition. So.
And you take people out on, when we're not in lockdown, you take people out on photography sort of days, don't you? Is that what you would call it? Photography
I do, yes. Yeah. That's how I would do my teaching, is take people out for a day, finding out from them beforehand what it is they want to gain from the day, what they already know about their camera and photography and what they want to develop. And then I build a program for them over the day. And we work on those, and usually have a very good time with great weather and lots of learning. So,
and out in our gorgeous Lake District.
Well, exactly. Yes, yeah, it's a big pull, isn't it? Living where we do. So
it's a shame actually you can't get out at the moment because there's a lot less tourists out. It's getting in the way of these shots.
Well, that's what Photoshop's for. I just gone. No, nobody left.
Now you're coming to us from Kendal, aren't you?
I am, yes, yeah.
But I presume predominantly your work takes you into the lakes. Is that right?
It does. Although currently working on a project I'm trying through this year, although things have changed slightly because of lockdown, I decided I was going to walk every street in Kendal. Oh. And taking my camera with me and seeing. So a huge change for me in, taking pictures that have people in and buildings. But it's been quite exciting. I also decided to focus that completely on black and white. So that's been a big shift, challenging me to learn new things. Because I like that, it keeps you on your toes, doesn't it? And
have you ever looked back at the old pictures of Kendal, like the Marjorie Duff collection and stuff, and maybe before and after?
Yeah, I just spent many happy hours last week. I borrowed a book off a neighbour of Wainwright's book, and he'd taken old photographs and drawn them. And there's some really fascinating insights into how Kendal used to look. And so I might go back to that and try and, find some of the places that are still the originals and include those in my photographs. So,
it'd be absolutely lovely to see right now as well, because there'd be so few people in there and you can really get before and after.
Well, definitely, yeah. And because I was in town one morning last week, I went in for sunrise one morning, and A, it was sunrise, but B, on lockdown, there was just nobody in town at all. So it was really nice to be able to, use my camera and get my daily exercise by walking there. And so, yeah, it was really good.
Oh, brilliant. Have you ever come across, by the way, an old picture of Wildman Street? It's something I've been trying to get because my grandpa, you might have seen there's an architect down Wildman Street opposite the video shop.
Yeah.
There's Ashdown's Modern Shoe Repairers, which was my grandpa. And I've often looked for in like the old books a picture of the shop, or at least the street, included the shop, but I've never been able to find one. So I'd love to see one. If you do,
keep my eyes open. Yeah, definitely.
So what you're here to show us today, and I think where your skill is something I wanted to get you on for, really, Eric, is because you're so good at teaching, because you've come from a primary school background.
Yeah.
You can treat us all like 7-year-olds. And
well, you could be quiet for a start.
I'm in circle time. This is show and tell.
Circle time. Oh, no.
What I do notice about a lot of photography training and, you know, even YouTubers is they assume a certain knowledge. And if you've got a camera that was maybe given to you, or you've just gone out and got something that's got some settings on it, you may have no idea what any of those settings do.
Absolutely. You know, the majority of the teaching I do is about what do all these buttons do, and how can I use them to best effect, you know. So, and that's pretty much what I'm going to focus on today, although I'll broaden that out a little bit, because in 20 minutes, half an hour, we haven't got a great deal of time to go into anything in depth. So I just thought we'd touch on lots of different things that would help people.
Right. Just start, and I'll try and shut up.
All right. Okay. So I thought I would give you 5. That's 5, because everybody does that nowadays, don't they? When you 5K, 5 people, all that sort of stuff. So 5 tips on how to get the best out of your camera, really. And the first one of those is about knowing your camera and knowing what the different things do. The second one of those, I'm going to talk to you about something called the exposure triangle, how to get the camera to expose the photograph correctly. Number 3, what happens if the camera can't cope, because they're not as smart as we are, despite what people think. Number 4, a little bit about composition, and lots of people will have heard of the rule of thirds, so I'm going to talk about that a little bit. And number 5, give you a few ideas for some little projects you can do around your house, or some challenges. That seems to be the in thing at the moment, doesn't it? You know, so you can take it as a challenge or as a project, whichever way, or an exploration, whichever way you choose. You know. So, okay, so the first thing is about knowing your camera. And you're right what you said earlier. There are, you know, if you get a new camera, there are buttons everywhere and they're all doing all sorts of things. But I would think that the key button to start off with would be knowing about this. Where are we?
I know left is right and right is left on these. I'm sorry. It's very...
Oh, there we go. So this button up on the top. Now, this is a Canon camera, so they will be slightly different on different cameras, but they all do pretty much the same thing. And they are the one, that's the button, and it usually is up on the top of the camera, that will allow you to set the different modes that your camera can use. So I'm going to talk a little bit about those and how you can use them to good effect. Yeah. So the first one is on Canon cameras, it says AV, but on most other cameras it says A, and that's for aperture, and that's about how wide the hole is that open when you press the shutter button, how wide the hole opens. The second one is again, Canon do this differently, but I don't know why. It's TV, but on most others it's S, and that's for time or shutter speed. So that's not about how wide it opens, it's about how long it's open for, whether it goes open and close or whether it's a fast. So, and those different...
I like that sound effect, by the way.
I'm good at sound effects. There'll be plenty as we go.
Actually sounds like it.
No, I can't repeat them. Sorry.
Practice.
Yeah. So the main thing that we would use our shutter speed for is to control motion within your picture. So for instance, if you are photographing something that's moving quickly, then you want the shutter speed to be really quick. So you would set your camera to S, and then finding out how then to control the shutter speed, which will be another button. And they're in, there's no point showing me on my camera because they're in all sorts of different places on different cameras. Even on different Canon cameras, they're in different places. So, but that's what instruction manuals are for, isn't it? Heaven forbid we have to use one. But, so if you want to control the motion, whether you want to freeze something or whether you want to make it nice and blurry through, you know, if you want that lovely waterfall effect where all the water goes all misty, then that is with a slower shutter speed that allows the thing to move through the picture. Wow. However, that's shutter speed. But if you want to control the depth of field, how much of your photograph is in focus, then you need to switch to the aperture priority. And this is usually for landscape photographs, although I'll come back to why you might use it in portraits in a moment. But in landscape, generally, you want to have as much of the picture from the front right to the mountains in the background, all to be beautifully focused.
Yeah, you wouldn't see the mountains in focus and nothing in focus in front of it, because it wouldn't.
A bit strange. Yes, yeah.
Oh, if you want to take a picture of my dog with some mountains in the background, then I could just focus on and just have my dog in focus, and then the background just be, you'd be able to see what it was maybe, but just slightly out of focus.
Indeed, and that's the bit I was going to talk about in just a second about portraits. No, it's fine. And I was saying that with the just with the landscape, no dog, then you would want to have a small aperture, which confusingly is when you find the numbers that they're on, it's a big number. So something like f16. I don't know why F. I don't know what that's for, but it's there, and that's what they're called. F16 will give you that really big back to front focus. But as you say, if you wanted to have the dog or a person in the front of the photograph in focus, and then whatever is in the background, you know, nice and soft and blurry, then you need to have the aperture wide open, which is a small number, usually around about f4, f3.5, something like that. And the closer you get to the subject, oh, I'm going to go the other way. Yeah, the closer you get to the subject as well, the more that blurry effect in the background works.
Well, I've got a lens because I used to do a bit of portrait photography, and I've got a lens that's a 2.8, which is
fantastic,
really wide. And what it meant was that if you got really close to, say, a child, literally you could have this eye in focus and this eye out of focus. That's how close we're talking about it. It's very tiny. And so you've got to use the right aperture for the right subject, haven't you? So you get the big one.
And as you say, you know, if you're doing portraits, you're more likely to be close up to the subject, so that effect will be enhanced.
Enhanced, yeah.
You know, the further away you get from something, the less that blurry background thing works.
Yeah, I did take one photograph once professionally, and I think I took it at 5.6, and it was of two boys standing next to each other, but one was behind the other. And because we're in a garden, I was actually further back than I'd anticipated. So actually the guy behind wasn't as much in focus as he should have been, really. So the guy wasn't really, you know, wasn't sharp, and the guy in front was sharp, and I should have kind of considered that in.
Yeah. Unless, of course, the one at the back was the least favourite son.
I think that's what it was. Yeah,
that's okay, isn't it? You know, you could.
Yeah, so it didn't really matter, did it?
No. But that's an effect you can play around with and get the, you know, get the photograph to look how you want to look, and that is by adjusting the aperture. So that's you know, part two of things to know about your camera. Second thing I would suggest that you do is, on the back of the cameras, there are nowadays a bamboozling amount of menus, but go through those menus and find out what they are, because nowadays, although they can be technically quite confusing, they're also capable of some amazing things. And if you don't know they're there, then you won't be able to take advantage of them. So look at the menus. And again, if you need to, refer to the instruction manual and see, well, if I put this setting, what does that mean? And usually with the menu things, they're things that you will just set once, maybe twice, and then just leave it at that. But it's worth knowing that those things are there, you know.
Yeah. When I first got my Canon camera many years ago now, I literally put I think it was a vase of flowers on a coffee table, and I took that photograph in every single way that the camera would allow me to take it, so I could physically see the differences. Because I tried to watch YouTube, and I couldn't work out, you know, what it meant. So actually, to take lots of photographs of the same thing, that's how I do my trial and error.
And now that lots of us have got the time to do that, you know, it's well worth doing, isn't it? You know, you can do it a section at a time or do it all at once. It doesn't matter. It's really good to know what the camera is capable of.
Yeah. And actually, the camera also tells you, doesn't it? When you see the preview of the photograph, it tells you what your settings were. So you don't even have to write them down. Like,
yeah, exactly.
We used to have to buy film, remember, and get it processed, and then write down the number. So
for each individual shot. Yeah, incredible.
Crazy, crazy.
Long live digital, I say. So
thank goodness.
And the next thing about the camera that I wanted to say was about how to hold it, really. And there's lots of different things depending on the type of camera, obviously. But if you're using an SLR like this, normally, obviously, it would have a lens on. But a good thing to do is sort of hands in the right place. Usually, they'll go around the little grip there, and your finger on the shutter button. Keep your elbows in. And if you're looking at the screen or if you're looking in through the viewfinder, just adjust the height accordingly. And a really good thing to do when you're taking a photograph is to think about your breathing, is get everything ready. Take a big deep breath in, hold your breath, and then slowly squeeze the button. Don't push on, jab at it, just gently squeeze. And that then reduces the amount of movement in the camera and hopefully will result in a better photograph.
If you're left-handed, Eric, is it still as easy to use the button on the right-hand side? I'm just curious. Do you know?
I don't know. I'm not left-handed, so but I've never known anybody say that it was awkward because you are holding it usually with both hands, and it's just one finger that's moving. So
but I would challenge you to switch it round, though, Eric, and try and use your left finger on it.
But I can't because the shutters. I'd have to do that, wouldn't I? And then
if you
use my thumb.
There's no such thing as a left-handed camera that I've ever seen.
Well, not that I'm aware of. Maybe there is somewhere. I don't know. You could also have one of these, in which case left-handed, right-handed, it doesn't really matter.
No.
And what I would suggest with your phone is it's a really unusual way of holding it. But can you see how I've got my little finger underneath and my top index finger over the top?
How kids do selfies. My kids taught me to do selfies like this.
And it just, but you can then, if you wish, you can take it the other way around, but use your other hand to do that.
Yeah.
And then on this side, you've got control of what you're pressing.
Sometimes there's a side button, isn't there, that you can press as well. So
you can do it with the volume button. And if you want to be really clever, you'll plug your headphones in, and usually with the volume button, you can use that as a shutter release as well, which is particularly good if you've got your phone on a little tripod, and then you don't want to be pressing it and moving it. You can just use the headphone as the shutter release. So that's a really good little.
Normally phones have got a little timer on them as well, haven't they?
They have, yeah. But depending on the thing I was going to say then is, lots of the stuff that we've talked about is related to cameras. But on phones now, if you've got the right app, you can control most of the things that you can control with a camera. Not to the same extent, but you can certainly get some of the effects that you could. And, a timer is one of those things that will appear in lots of apps. I think because I use an iPhone and it's certainly got a timer built in. So very easy to do. And a really useful thing, if you want to rush around and be in the family portrait or whatever, it's really good. So
rush around and be in it, yeah. I was asking about phones versus cameras that I don't know the answer to. Let's say you wanted see these canvases here.
Yeah.
See that's a camera canvas. So you've been able to enlarge it. I won't say blow it up. Enlarge it really big.
Yeah.
You can't do the same on a phone. Is that right? How big can you get on a phone?
Yes, you are right in that. Phone pictures generally will print really well, but usually to A4 would be, I wouldn't want to push it going much further than that. You might occasionally with the right phone and the right conditions and everything, but if you just want to print up to A4, then phone will be perfectly good. And it doesn't really matter so much. People say, oh, my phone's got 21 megapixels or whatever. Yes, that does make a difference, but that's not the whole story. And it's the size of the sensor is tiny in a phone compared to that in a camera. So although it might be the same amount of pixels, they're spread out and larger. So a much clearer picture from a camera.
Well, also, if you send yourself a camera picture, a phone picture, it's between like 500 meg and 500 meg? 500 kilobytes and a meg, isn't it?
I think
size.
Yeah.
And then, but if you've got a picture like this, it could be up to sort of 15
megabytes, yeah, definitely. And depends on, again, as well, what settings you've got in your camera, whether you're recording that as a raw image, which basically means the camera records all the data for you and doesn't fiddle with it at all. But the likelihood is it won't look very good until you take it into the computer and play in Photoshop or whatever. Or you can have it, but that means it's a really large file. But you can then take it, set it for JPEG, which is what normally would happen. Whereas the camera takes that raw data and it decides what it thinks the photograph should look like. So but it makes a much, and then it gets rid of all the rest of the data. So you have a much smaller file, but you have a lot less control over what you can do with it. So it depends if you're wanting to spend time manipulating on the computer, which to me is just as much fun as the actual going out and taking the photographs. But for other people, it's just tedium. So, the JPEG is the way to go there, and then the camera makes the decision for you. And generally nowadays, they're really good. You very rarely see a bad photograph, unless it's from the photographer's era. Right.
My sister, who is a fantastic wedding photographer, Kathy with a K, Kathy Ashdown, she's amazing. Obviously, I'm slightly biased. And the amount of people that say to her, "That's an amazing photograph. You must have a really good camera."
Yeah. I get that lot. Well, I'm sure every photographer gets that lots. And it's quite often the first question that you ask, what sort of camera do you use? And so my answer is, well, I have 5, from my phone up to, I have one of those old-fashioned box cameras with 2 lenses on the front that you have to look down into the top of. So it all depends, and
you took a great picture of me, because Eric and I went on a little walking trip a while back, just before lockdown. Actually, we timed it right, didn't we? And there was a few of us went, and you took an amazing picture of me. And I was going to ask you how you did it, because I don't know if I could have got the same, whether it's you've got a better phone, if we're going to go down that route, like equipment route, or whether, you carry on, I'll look for it, and then you can explain exactly how you got it.
Or possibly explain how I got it.
Possibly not. Possibly completely forget.
Yeah. I'll make something up anyway, so it'll sound good. So. Okay, so I touched briefly before on the use of a tripod, and that's something that, yes, it can be a bit of a pain carrying one around, but they do make a big difference to certain types of photographs. So if you're wanting to take landscapes, then they're brilliant, not only from the fact that you're then sure that your camera will be perfectly still, but it also, and so therefore your image will be perfectly sharp, but it also means that in the setting it up process, instead of taking your photograph and checking it and then thinking, oh, that's not right, and then bringing it back up to your eye level and then having to readjust everything again, that's just, it's there. You can spend the first couple of minutes adjusting your composition and then start messing with the technical bits, knowing that you've got the composition nailed down. So it is a really good tool to use, and something well worth practicing with. So, because they do take a bit of practice, because they can be a bit of a pain.
Okay, fantastic.
Another thing, clean your lens. Even if it's on your phone, I think particularly on your phone, because these things are in your pocket and in your bag or wherever, and these get filthy.
Yeah, mine has always got thumbprints on it, and actually, I mean, I'm using a kitchen roll. That's probably not the best thing to use, is it?
Not the best, but it'll be fine. I think probably the best thing to do is, the really soft lint-free cloth, lint-free cloths that you can use to clean your spectacles with.
Yeah, I've got a lint-free jumper.
No, that's not the right
lint-free jumper. Okay, that's not. I'm not doing very well here, am I? I've got no lint-free cloth.
Well,
lint-free cloth today.
Go to the opticians and say, "Oh, have you got one of?"
Oh, one of these, you mean?
I do. Yeah, perfect.
Yeah, Vision Express. You're right. I didn't even know that was here.
I would have plugged Spurrett's Opticians in Kendal rather than Vision Express being on that. Never mind.
Obviously, yours is better than mine. Right. Okay, I've cleaned it, so that's nice and clean now. So let's have a look.
Photographs will be perfect all the time.
Have a look. That does look a lot cleaner, actually, I have to say.
It does make a massive difference. Yeah,
it does. It is definitely clearer. Interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
I remember that one.
Okay, so that's pretty much all I wanted to say about the camera, except I'm going to finish that section with a little quote from a American photographer Ansel Adams, who's famous for his huge black and whites of Yosemite Valley and everything. And he said the most important part of a camera is the 12 inches behind it. So I think that really puts it into perspective that, yes, your camera is a technical wonder piece, but it's what you do with it that's the important thing, and that goes back to that question of what sort of camera do you have. It doesn't really matter. It's how you use it that's important. So.
And when you're a professional or even just a semi-professional photographer, do you find that you can look at other people's landscape photographs and know who took it?
It depends who they are. Certain photographers, yes, and that obviously comes with familiarity as well. And I don't just mean familiar that thing with a particular photograph, but with a style and a color palette and things like that. So yes, you can. There's a couple of guys who photograph around the Lake District. Mark Littlejohn, who works on the steamers at Ullswater, his work is amazing, and it's very typically Mark Littlejohn. And there's also a guy called Colin Bell who works. Well, he's from Widnes, but he has a place up here. And is here an awful lot, and not at the moment, but and his photographs all have a really soft, dreamy, soft. I think I'll just leave that there, and but beautifully composed as well. So yeah, really. And
it's look at something like Amy Bateman and her photography, the farm photography and how well it's lit, and you can just, I think, obviously the subject gives it away a little bit, doesn't it? But I've not seen farm photography like that before. I think. It's I don't know, coming from a farmer, female farmer with her own kids and her own lambs, and I don't know, it's just got a special kind of feel to it, and I love what she does. I think it's amazing.
Absolutely, yeah. And there's also, a lot depends on how photographers process their work in Photoshop, because they will pretty much all have a certain way of doing things, which presents it with a certain type of look. You can often pick up on that as well. So
I did notice that, or I have noticed, in I Love the Lake District, where people put their shots in, they take a picture on their phone, and to try and make up for the fact it wasn't that great, they just oversaturate it and over contrast it, and
saturation sliders go left as well as right. I think it is, and I have to say it's a very American thing to oversaturate things, and that's come. A little aside is that I was once in a gallery in Las Vegas of a Peter Lick, he's actually Australian, but he's one of the world's most successful, certainly from a financial point of view. And his photographs are all really saturated. And then the gallery was gorgeous, and his photographs are gorgeous. There's no getting away from that. But the beautiful assistant came and asked me what I thought of a certain photograph, and I said, well, to my delicate European tastes, it's a little oversaturated, and she couldn't usher me out of the shop quickly enough.
And was she a bit oversaturated as well?
Oh, indeed, yes. Yeah, she was.
Okay, let's move on.
Yeah, so the second thing I wanted to talk about, tip number 2, is about the exposure triangle, and it might be a little technical, but I'm only going to touch on it, so it's just to give you an idea of what it's about. And it's called the exposure triangle because there are 3 parts to what make a perfectly exposed photograph. Now, the camera decides whatever comes through the lens of your camera. The camera then decides what will make the exposure, but you have control of the parameters of how that's done. The shutter speed and the aperture are 2 of them, and the third one is ISO. Which basically, I don't know what the letters stand for, international standards something, but that's not important. So basically what it means is how sensitive your camera is to light. In the old days, it used to be a roll of film would be ISO of 100. Oh, very good. Yeah, very good. Look
what I prepared earlier.
Prepared drawings. So I'll come to mine. Yeah, but that's exactly what it's
visual.
Yeah, and to get a balanced exposure, all those 3 things need to work together. So I'm going to try and show this.
It's really hard to do
that way. Yeah. Okay. So this is my first photograph. So you can see here I have hopefully an equilateral triangle. It means the aperture, the shutter, the ISO
and the aperture
are all nicely in balance. But if I wanted to say I wanted to get that fuzzy background, that the aperture there might not be the right one. So, or maybe, oh crikey, maybe if I'm I might want it to be a bit blurrier, so I might change something. So if I move over onto the second one, where you can see I've pushed the shutter speed slightly in that direction, and that means that the triangle is no longer balanced. It's no longer.
Oh, I thought you just drawing it like
that. Well, it could be that. So either the camera or you, depending on how you've got your settings, will then make an adjustment. And you can see here that in this case, what's happened is that the camera has pushed the aperture further out that way. And then again, if I'd drawn it accurately, it would have been a nice, I'm not pointing at it, would have been a nice equilateral triangle again. So everything would come into balance. ISO, I would just leave alone. You can either leave it on auto or set it at, I don't know, 400 normally in the Lake District or anywhere else in the world, 100. Or on a sunny day here, 100 ISO is good.
And the difference with the ISO, isn't it, is I've taken photographs like at night time, like trying to get, I don't know, fireworks, for example, and you'd stick it on like 1600 or whatever it'll go up to. And there's some Canons have got a doubling, haven't they? So you can get to 3200. And
yeah, definitely.
What you've got is just a massive missing information, haven't you? It just goes really like
pixelated and and not pleasant. So that's the downside. Yes, you could push your ISO up high and it would be really sensitive and you'd have better control all the time, but there's a payoff. So I would leave a ceiling of about 800. Usually in Britain, 400 is great all the time, and then if you can, take it down to 100. Or as I say, just leave it on auto. Although that is then giving control of something back to the camera.
But you could take, I suppose, like one of our sunsets we've got at the moment, as the sun's just about gone down, you've got all those lovely rays, and just try it on different ISOs and keep everything else the same and just experiment, see what happens.
And it is like the scientific experiment is keep everything else the same.
Yeah.
And when you're just making that one adjustment, you know what the effect's going to be of that one thing, don't you? So
like marketing.
Yeah. Yeah. Try something, see what happens. Indeed. Yeah. So the triangle, we've already talked about shutter speed and how that changes the motion within your picture, and the aperture, which changes the depth of field in your picture. So those three things together are what make the exposure triangle. And a lot of the calculation is done by the camera, but you then set the variables within that and let the camera do its work. I mean, I think there's a lot of an idea from a lot of people that, I'm not doing it properly unless my camera's set on manual. And I think that you just making things difficult for yourself. Aperture priority and shutter priority are pretty much all you need. There are things you can do to adjust around that, but with those, if you can nail those two things, then you'll be quids in and flying. Yeah, definitely.
So just to be clear about it, so if you chose aperture priority, it means you're choosing the aperture, but the
camera.
Yes.
Yeah, and the other way around. Obviously, if you're on aperture priority, you choose the aperture, and the camera chooses the shutter speed that it needs to get the correct exposure.
Yeah, brilliant.
Okay, so that was tip number 2. Tip number 3 is related to that, and is about what happens if your photograph is overexposed or underexposed, because our brains are far better at judging a scene in terms of brightness than a camera is, because what happens is our eye is continually moving around the scene, and our brain then sees, that's a dark bit, that's a light bit, that's a middle bit, and it adjusts, whereas the camera can just see it once and it takes the photograph and it doesn't make those adjustments that our brain can do. So quite often, the picture where you've taken the beautiful photograph of your loved one on the beach, and they are either completely black and everything else is beautifully exposed, or they're perfectly exposed and everything else is just white. And what you want is the two things to be perfectly exposed. And there are 3 ways that you can help yourself to get that exposure correct. And the first one is when you're looking into the viewfinder of the camera, or on the screen, or whatever it might be. Down at the bottom, usually down at the bottom, it will show you what the camera is set at for the aperture and for the shutter speed. And if one or both of those are flashing at all, it means that the camera is either under or overexposed, as in it can't cope with the settings that you've got at the moment. And then you have to think, well, I'll have to adjust that somehow, and it might mean making your shutter speed slower or something like that, So, but look at those things, and if any of them are flashing, it means you've got to do something different. The second thing you can look at are things called the blinkies. I don't know what their official title. Well, I know in Canon cameras, it's called the highlight alert setting. But generally people just refer to the blinkies. And that means that once you've taken the photograph and you look at it on the back of your camera, if there's a section of it that's flashing white, it means that's completely overexposed. And just to be clear, that if people don't know, overexposed means it's gone beyond what was needed. And so you've just got an area that is pure white. There's no information in that. And no matter what you do in Photoshop, you can't cover that because there isn't anything there to bring back. When you're looking on the back of the screen, that means if there's a section that's flashing, and you can turn this on or off. Personally, I hate it. It really annoys me, but for some people it works really well. And that then means that if that bit is flashing, it means you're overexposed and you're going to have to retake the photograph with different settings. Right. And the third and most important, certainly from my perspective, most accurate control that you have is by using a thing called a histogram. And this again appears when you have, after you've taken the photograph, and you can have it switched on or switched off, and it will be in the form of a graph like that, which doesn't look like much of a graph. That's an empty thing.
Right.
So at this side here, is this the left?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. This is for darkness. That will become a little clearer in a minute. And then as the graph moves this way, it's going towards light. So I'll just draw in what your histogram might look like. You might have something like that. Right. Okay. Now the
Langdales, isn't it?
Possibly. The important thing is that here is a gap. Where that goes down to the bottom, it doesn't touch the outside edge of the graph. And the same at the other end. Okay, there's a gap there. If you're, and I'm going to draw another one now, I'm going to draw over the top of it.
Well, that was an art lesson as well, Eric.
Yeah, it's good. You can see here that the histogram has gone up here. And this is on the left, isn't it? Yeah. So on the left of it, and that means that anything here is just pure black. Right. So then, like I've explained about pure white before, anything that's pure black just has no detailing. Now, our brain will accept pure black a little more than it will accept pure white, just because we think, oh, it's in the shadows, it'll be dark, and it is a natural thing. So what to do with the histogram is when you have taken the photograph, have a look at it and just check that it's not banking up on one side or the other. And if it is, then if it's on the left-hand side, then you think, okay, I need to brighten the photograph a little bit, so you could make adjustments to do that. Or if it's on the right, you think, oh, okay, I need to darken that a little bit and make adjustments there. But again, it does mean, as with the blinkies, that you will have to retake the photograph with different settings.
But if you're checking it as you go, you're still in the same place. Hopefully you can get it again.
Yes. Yeah.
And the histogram comes up after you've taken the shot, you can see different settings for that shot. Is that right?
Indeed, yeah. I mean, with mine, once I've taken a shot, I can either have just the picture, or I can have the picture with shutter speed and aperture and ISO, or I can have about 10 million different things, including the histogram. And if you go, all the settings for that are generally in the menu. Are you going to ask me about a phone and histogram on a phone?
No, I'm just going to just show you. That's the picture that you took, which is amazing. Okay. And so many people ask me how I took it. Clearly, for a minute.
Yeah, a lot of that was because the way I set the exposure on that, it's gone now. Yeah, was because the sky was really, and certainly there is one section there that where the sun is, where it is completely overexposed.
Yeah.
Because it's the sun, I thought, well, okay, we'd accept that was that we couldn't look at it and see any detail anyway. Yeah. But I set the exposure, and on a phone, you set the exposure by tapping on a part of the screen.
Yes. Yeah.
And I tapped on a really bright, not on the sun, because that's the really bright, but on a bright part of that screen to set the exposure there.
So if I was going to take, let's say I was going to take, this is very weird. Take so I can't do this actually. There you go. So I can press on a bit of here and it'll go light or dark according.
Indeed, yeah. And it'll only be small, you know, because where you are now, the range of tone from the brightest to the darkest isn't massive.
No.
So the changes will. But if you're outside and you're photographing a cave against a cave in a landscape with the sky, then the sky is going to be really bright and the cave will be really dark. So it will make a massive difference. And that's what I did with that photograph, the one that you just showed before, is that I made sure I exposed, because the sky was really interesting, wasn't it? Yeah. So I made sure that I was exposed properly by tapping on the sky.
But you did take it with your phone, which is amazing. Even 3 or 4 years ago, you couldn't have done that, could you? And
no, they wouldn't have had the dynamic range in those days. But now, you know, what you can achieve with the phone is so much better than it was. So, yeah, it was good. And a very happy memory too. You know, it was a good day out, or a good 3 days out, wasn't it? So it
was a good 3 days and 2 nights.
Yeah. No drinking was done at all.
Not at all.
I know, highly professional. So
I'm glad we've had that in the bank actually. That 3 days, it was lovely.
Yeah, it was, wasn't it? And it's, as you say, it happened just before lockdown. So the fact that we were sort of building up to the next one, even if we hadn't got particularly far with planning or dates or anything, but it was always, there's that to look forward to. So that's something post lockdown that will be high on my list of things to get sorted, I think.
It makes us appreciate it all as well, doesn't it? And not to wait, just to do, because we very nearly had to postpone that again. And if we had, we wouldn't have been able to go. So
yeah, because somebody in the group moved house 2 days after we got back, didn't they?
Well, I was so organised. I'm so used to it that I could just do it. But yeah, it's true. It is true. Anyway.
But as you say, just doing it, it was fine because everything worked out, didn't it? You know.
And actually, let's just bring that back to cameras, because actually so many people are fearful of what the camera can and can't do and how they will mess it up. You can't mess up a digital photograph.
No, definitely not. And, you know, in the old days, you'd worry, you'd have 36 exposures on your roll of film and you think, well, I've got to get them all right. But now if you get them wrong, it doesn't matter, because you can just look at it and say, yes, that's wrong. I need to do this to make it better. And you get instant feedback and you can, you know, work there. And also you get, like you said about going through the menu and trying to, what does it look like if I do this, this and this? Then it's just so easy to do. It's great.
Well, I remember back to when Paddy was first born, so sort of early to mid 90s. And, you know, you'd take because I used to work for Quick Snaps, although it was the portrait shop at the time. And people in Quick Snaps, they would take in a roll of film. It would have like Christmas, then holiday, and then another Christmas in it on 36. Because they couldn't afford to get it produced, because actually it used to work out about £1 a photo by the time you bought the film and then had it developed. So 36 pictures, 36 quid. You can't even imagine that these days.
No, not at all. You know, I bet you most people will look at their phones and there'll be hundreds of photographs there, won't there? You know,
thousands. Our kids are going to have such
thousands if you're not organised, Sam, and haven't deleted all the duplicates.
2,700, I've just checked. But
I'm intrigued now. I don't know how many I've got.
how many have you got?
It won't be any. 186.
So, Phil, how many photographs you got on your phone? Have a look. I'm going to get Phil to look. Do you know what? This is the most documented generation we've ever had.
Yeah, it is, isn't it?
It's incredible, really. 465. Why have I got 2,500?
Because you don't delete any.
He's got nothing to. He doesn't. He just works. Doesn't do anything with his life. So he's got no photographs. I bet
there's only so many selfies you can take, aren't there?
There's so many selfies. Yeah, he's got 450 selfies, haven't you? Let's move on. Sorry, Eric.
Okay, no problem. So the
where are we up to?
Well, histogram. Yeah. Well, I'm pretty much sorted on histogram. I think all I wanted to say.
Yeah.
So the next thing I want to talk about a little bit was composition.
Yeah.
And really, this is, we could write a thesis at a PhD level on this if we wanted to. And I've got a book that's kind of this thick, which has many words in that I have no idea what they mean. It can be such a complicated subject area, but it can also be really simple. And so that's what I want to talk about, is just one thing to do with composition, which is the rule of thirds. And the first thing you need to know about the rule of thirds is it's not a rule. I don't know why it's called that, but just use it more as guidance. And from that perspective, it's what?
The suggestion of thirds.
yeah. And from that perspective, it is really, really useful. And basically, it's about splitting your camera screen up into 9 sections. And you can set this, and you can have these lines set so that when you're taking the photograph, you can see those lines on your screen. Mm-hmm. Basically, it's a really good idea to line up important elements of the composition on those lines. For instance, if we just think about a horizon in a landscape shot, you've got 2 lines that you could put the horizon on. And to me, I would think generally about what does the land look like and what does the sky look like. And if the sky was the more interesting feature, I would put the horizon on the bottom line, which means I'd have 1/3 land and 2/3 sky.
Yeah, so just talk us through your choices there then, because that's the composition that you did. So
well, I was a little stuck with choices there in that.
And you can't see it. That's where am I? Oh, I can't see that. There you go. That is me just there.
Yeah. And you can see the thing with the rule of thirds is it moves the subject matter away from the center of the photograph, which is why you're there and not in the center, because the brain doesn't like things central.
Right.
Apparently, in that big thick book.
Why is that?
Because then it's got all different directions to go. It thinks the eye can then go that way, that way, that way, that way, and it doesn't know what to look at. Whereas if you've got it on one side, you're pushing the brain and the eye there, and then it can come in through the rest of the photograph. I don't know.
It's giving the eye direction.
Well, possibly, yeah. I mean, it doesn't have to be normally, if you've got a person, you would have them on one side looking into the photograph. So if I was here, I would be looking. Yeah. If I went, I can't do that. Yeah. If I went over there, no. If I went over there and looked out of the photograph, it looks quite strange. It probably looks strange whatever I was doing.
I see. So looking into the photograph like that would be okay, but if I look like that,
people would follow your gait. Yes, exactly. Yeah. But obviously, if it's a static object like a tree, trees look fantastic on. I'll see. I got one the other day. Trees look fantastic on the thirds. Trees look fantastic.
Yeah, I suppose most people will just stick the tree in the middle.
Yeah, and it doesn't look nearly so good. So there, where are we? So I'll have to try and get the whole thing in.
That's it. Oh, yeah, I see.
So on the third.
Yeah, most people would have taken that with the tree in the middle, for certain.
Yeah. And sometimes that will work really well, but other times it doesn't. So generally speaking, the rule of thirds is a good idea to start with.
You know? It looks like you've thought it out more when it's like that. Like
rather than point at the thing.
Just plonked, doesn't it?
Yes. and it works well, you know, with portraits. You can see where I'm positioning myself now. I'm sort of down this there, which would be on one of those lines there. And my eyes, I think, probably. Yeah, I'm not. Oh, where's the middle there? And so experiment with it. Try it, see what happens. Try things out. Everybody will be doing this. I hope you're all doing this at home now. So
it's definitely better than being right in the middle like that.
It is. Very
if I go down and then to the left more.
Yeah. Things that are central look far more static than things that are on the edges, looking, you know, moving in or out.
It's sort of more interesting, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. Yeah. And as I say, the explanation of that is degree level, thesis, PhD level stuff. But all we need to know is the practicality of it, you know. And so it is a really good starting point. It's not the be all and end all by any means, but you know, it really is a good starting point. And similarly, those where's my picture? My thing on this where these lines meet.
Yeah.
They're really good places to put things as well. You know, if you've got a flower, maybe put the center of the flower right on one of those intersections.
Right.
And that's a good, you know, a good positioning for whatever it is.
When you're looking, if you haven't got the grid up, when you're looking at through the lens, imagine that, and then you just try and position where those intersections are.
Indeed, yeah.
Box in the middle, isn't it? Actually, so you're going to position it on the.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like a rectangular box in the center of your viewfinder.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the intersections are the corners of that rectangle, aren't they? So
yeah.
But you know, it's easy to do on your phone or on your camera. Just go into the menus and find out how to put those on. And again, normally that's a one-off setting, and once you put them on, they're there until you decide to turn them off. So it's an easy thing to do, and they don't appear on the finished photograph, obviously. You know.
Obviously, yeah. We probably should have said that, actually. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's not obvious. On the camera settings in my phone or in the camera part of my phone?
I'm sure I looked at this the other day for something.
So I can't see a camera set. Oh, there it is. There it is.
You are on an iPhone, aren't you?
So I've said, oh, grid. There you go. So I'm in an iPhone. I've gone into settings. I've looked at camera, and you can see there's a grid. So I'm going to just stick it on. So now you can see it's on green. You can see that. And then if I just go to my camera, you probably can't see this. Maybe if I put something, I can't really show you, but there you go. Can you see the lines?
Yeah, you can. Well, I can.
Yeah. So actually now I can see a box. And I could choose, they're very, very faint, but when you're looking through it, it's not that faint. Just for you, it's faint, that's all.
Yeah.
I can then choose some of that box.
And it works both vertically and horizontally. So, you know, it's a good little tip.
Yeah, thank you. I'm going to keep that on, actually. I'm going to practice for a while.
Good. Okay, so that's all you're getting on composition, because that's, as I say, that's a whole different area of expertise that... we could go on for hours and hours about. So,
and I think when you've actually taken it, you don't really know what you're talking about, because actually what I tend to do is if I'm taking a landscape, I'm terrible at landscape photography because I want to keep everything in, and then you've lose.
Okay, yeah.
But if where I stand, if I take a picture of that and then I literally just take one to the left, one to the right, one above and one below, because that isn't necessarily what I want, is it? So I kind of do that just to try it.
And that's why you've got 3,000 photographs on your phone.
That is absolutely one of the reasons why.
But you're right, it's absolutely right. Looking at it and taking the picture is very different than looking at the picture.
Yeah.
And it's always really good to have a good look at the photograph after you've taken it, whether it's on your camera or on your phone, and thinking, okay, have I got that right? Do I need to move anything? And do I need to take it again? And I'm going to give you another Ansel Adams quote now. It's 2 for the price.
If you haven't looked it up, it's amazing, isn't it? I used to have a calendar of his, black and white, gorgeousness.
Okay, and he said 99% of a good photograph is about where you stand. And that could mean just a step to the right.
I'm going to just show you this picture here, actually, because it's quite light to show you. I don't know if you can see this. So this is This is actually a stock photograph, but it's of somebody who takes a lot of local, so it's you know, it's not stock. Can you see that? Okay.
Yeah.
So obviously, you've got the boat there. This is at Derwentwater, I think. I think it is. That looks like
it is.
Yeah. So just talk about where he's standing there. He's probably getting his feet wet.
But yeah, quite probably getting his feet wet, but also not. He wouldn't be taking that, I don't think, at eye level. He'd have come down a little bit to get a view across the boat better, and also that means that the mountains will stick up a little bit. Cat Bell's sticking up above the launch a little bit more.
Yeah.
And also notice he's not positioned himself centrally to the row of boats, but he's positioned himself at the end, so you can then get the view along the whole row, and then the launch sort of. To me, what this photograph is doing is it's leading you across the tops of the rowing boats, and then when you get to the end, you sort of turn right then to the launch and into the hills. Yeah.
Now the fact it's got quite a milky effect on the lens.
So that might, I can't see enough detail there, but probably is it all sort of smoothed out?
Yeah. No way.
What he'll have done then is put a filter over the camera, over the lens, sorry, and made sure that it was a long exposure.
Wow.
So what would happen is the water would be moving around, and so it's essentially just blurry water. It's the same as when you see a blurry waterfall. That's what's happened. But you have to be on a tripod to be able to do that.
One word of warning for those of you who are watching. When you've got a really nice photograph, don't get a cheap canvas company to do it, because some of the photograph goes around the corner. And
that's no good at all, is it? So
so I really need to think about that, because I'm thinking, well, the boat isn't completely on. What it is, just wrapped around the corner.
Yeah.
So something worth bearing in mind. Yeah, it's nice though.
Yes, it is.
Sorry, carry on.
That's all right. So just going to come on to my final thing now about projects, challenges, explorations, whatever you like to call them, and just a way of, rather than just taking random photographs, around home or whatever, is think of, give yourself I'm sorry about this, focus of what to do.
You did there.
Yeah, I've spent hours thinking of that, honestly. So, call them what you like, but I think, referring back to something somebody said last week, is do what excites you.
Yeah.
So there's no point going out and taking, well, not no point, but you would get less from taking loads of photographs of plants if plants aren't your thing. If you've got the kids that are you're completely everything, and you want to take photographs of your kids, then take photographs of your kids. Call it homeschooling, whatever, but do something that excites you. Pick, and you don't have to just do one topic. You can do as many as you like. But really, to me, it would be the way I would approach it. I would research what other people have photographed of that type of thing, because whatever you think of, somebody will have done it before. And there'll be thousands of photographs on Instagram or Flickr or wherever they might be, and have a look and see what you like that other people have done, and see if you can replicate that in a way. There's a lot to be said for that, standing on the shoulders of giants, and we might as well use what other people have done well before to see if we can build our skills based on that.
I suppose if you did want to build up your kit, at least if you know what you're going to photograph, you know what to put in your kit in terms of lenses and equipment.
Yeah, because it would be very easy to end up with masses of kit and not knowing what to use. But if you think about, well, I'm going to do this, I need just this type of lens or filter or whatever it might be. So yeah, that's definitely a good way of doing things. So I thought I could give everybody some ideas for topics that they might, if you're stuck. I've got 5, because sticking with the theme of 5. I thought one thing you could do would be, and it seems a bit trite, but to take a selfie, but not just to hold your phone at arm's length and click. see if you can do something really creative. And if you, again, if you go back to, like I said, about researching that, you'll see some amazing self-portraits. So it's well worth looking and finding what other people have done and seeing if you can do that. Number 2 is a picture of another person. You know, I'm sure there's somebody in the house that would happily just sit for hours. I would happily sit for hours. I do that with my camera quite regularly. Who, you know, will be your model for you. And, you know, particularly if they're a member of family, they tend to get less stuck on, oh, I feel a bit embarrassed because it's you and you know them and you can ask them to do certain things and, you know, sit in a certain way and face the light, turn away from the light, whatever it might be. So lots of options there. And again, research will give you all sorts of things. And particularly, I think the use of light in portraits is a massive thing. And you can get some amazing effects just by where you position the model and the direction they're facing in. So you can get some very, very satisfying results from that. It's awesome.
Great.
Another one which sort of ties into the Instagram thing, but it is far more than that if you look into it, is photographing food. I was doing, last week I did a few challenges for myself just around the house and things, and one of the ones I did was food. And lots of my research saw, you know, pictures of food on slate, because that's what we do nowadays, isn't it? You know, in our bohemian ways. So I took a satsuma outside into the garden because we don't have slate plates here, but we do have slate on the patio. And so I just spent hours photographing a satsuma on the slate of the patio, which amused me.
Way time on your hands you have.
I have to stay at home, just doing what I've been told. But it was great, and I was really pleased with the results in the end. You know, at first I was saying, what on earth am I doing this for? And they're just rubbish, but the more I explored and the more I moved things around a little bit, and I was really quite pleased with what I achieved in the end. So yeah, so food is another one. And the fourth one, I touched on this slightly before with regards to portraits, but it can apply to anything really. Shadow and light, a little more abstract, I think, but there's some really fascinating things, you know, that you can photograph there. I was out for a run before, and down by the river, there was as I went round a bend, there was a railing on the bend, and the shadows of the railing as they curved round the bend as well on the pavement was just really interesting. You know, I thought, okay, that might be worth coming back for.
Down by Waterside?
Yeah, not far from there. So
I tell you what's interesting about those is how they change with the light of the day. So from very early in the morning, like night. Obviously at the middle of the day you're going to see hardly any shadow, but it might be a lot more I don't know, contrasty.
Yes, the shadows will be more distinct. Well, I think that brings its own problems. I very rarely photograph in bright sunlight because it brings very harsh shadows, particularly if you're photographing people or landscapes. And then the ends of the day give much more gentle light, which make for much more enjoyable photographs to look at. So.
And you photographers call that something, don't you?
The golden hour.
Golden hour.
Yeah. And that's sort of the time round sunrise and sunset, when, you know, you can get, well, we've seen an awful lot of really lovely sunsets recently, haven't we? So, well, and sunrises, not that I've been out for many, but I've been out for a few of them, and it's been really lovely.
Well, a friend of mine posted on Strava an amazing sunrise photograph, and when I went to see what time it was 5:15.
That's the thing. Now is kind of the end of when I would consider going out for sunrise, until we get to September, October again, because it just gets ridiculously early.
Well, you know, when we do our twilight images in the summer at Ashdown Jones, in the height of the summer in June, that is really midnight, actually.
Yeah.
I think Hannah was out at somebody's house, wasn't she? 11:30? 11:30 at night to get the right shot. And even then, really, Eric, it never gets completely dark.
It's quite amazing how much light there is even then, you know. Yeah. And the fifth suggestion for what you might photograph is more of a theme than a topic, is lockdown. How could you photograph lockdown? What does it mean to you? And that ties in a lot with how I like to approach my landscape photography. I generally don't like to take the picture postcard photographs that are just of a place so that everyone will go, oh, that's the Langdale Pikes or whatever it might be. I like to take something that photographs that are about a place, so they try to capture the essence of something, you know. And I think that would distill nicely into taking a photograph of lockdown. What does it, because it will be different for everybody, you know. Some people it will be a really positive experience, and for others far less so, you know. So lots of ideas there that, you know, people.
Yeah. Got my mind actually whizzing already. And actually, I remember what you said at Bleat Tarn. We went to Bleat Tarn together, and you said, look out for all the tripod indentations in the ground.
Yeah.
That's the same photograph. So what we're saying is, don't take the same photograph as everybody else. Have a different spin on it. Have you spin on it, and bring you into the picture. Is that right?
Yeah. I mean, for instance, Bleat Tarn, it's, you know, it's a classic view for a really good reason, because it is beautiful, isn't it? You know, and I completely understand why people want to photograph it, and I have nothing against that at all. And I've been there myself and taken those photographs. But to me, it was all part of my progression into learning how to take my photographs and not copying somebody else's. But that copying and looking at people's work and thinking, well, how can I achieve that? I think that's a really useful learning tool, and something well worth, you know, studying. And if you want to take great Lake District photographs, have a look at other Lake District photographs and think, okay, so first of all, where is it? What time of day is it? How high up or how low down have they been? And, you know, is it a wide shot or is it a really narrow focus? All those things that you can think about and try and copy that shot and practice your techniques that way. And then with that becomes familiarity with your camera and your equipment and how things work. And that will give you more confidence then to go on and try your own more creative approaches, which is, you know,
if you look at, say, a musician, you know, somebody just starting out in the music business, whether that means, you know, pubs and clubs or wedding or whatever, they generally do covers at first, don't they? Because they're learning their art, and then they can go on, they progress and start their own, you know, developing their own styles and music and all the rest of it, and composing. And that's really what you're doing, really. If you can copy what somebody else has done and emulate them, then you're learning from their experience, and then you can then go on and progress that in a different direction.
Yeah, and lots of the things I've just spoken about today are just mechanics, you know. And if you can have those mechanics sorted in your head, when the opportunity presents itself to you to do something wonderful yourself, you will instinctively know what to do with the camera to get the effect that you want. And you won't be thinking, oh, if I do this, and then it's gone, you know. So it's well worth learning the nuts and bolts so that you can then go on to be more creative yourself. So.
Before there's something urgent in front of you, like a sunset that's just about to literally go, you need to practice now. Yeah, okay, thank you. Where can people find out more about you, Eric, and follow your work?
A number of places. My website is ericpyephotography.co.uk.
P-Y-E.
It's what, sorry?
Pye, P-Y-E.
P-Y-E.
Eric Pooter in front of you. So that's not Eric's surname.
Short for computer, obviously.
He's not called Eric Pooter. He's called Eric Pye, P-Y-E.
I hadn't realised that would come.
Phil didn't get that.
Sorry, Phil. Too fast for you. I hadn't realised that would come up on that. I thought that was just a name I was giving it from my perspective. But, never mind. I'll know next time. So yeah, also on Facebook, Eric Pye Photography. Instagram, the same. Although I tend not to do as much on Instagram. Don't know why, really. I should. And that's where you can find me. So.
And you did say when I strong-armed you the other day that if we sent you an image or a question, you would attend to that and give them feedback. Is that right?
Yes. Yeah, if people have one image, rather than the whole portfolio, that they would like me to have a look at and cast my critical eye over, I can do that. And if you say what sort of level of bluntness you would like in the response.
And also, if somebody wanted to, once we're out of lockdown, of course, find out more about your things like your courses, can you give us a flavour of the kind of thing that you do?
Yeah, sure. I think we touched earlier on, if we're doing a one-to-one thing, that we would email back and forth between each other. There's a pro forma to fill out, and I would find out what it is you know already and what you're interested in photographing and how you would like to develop that. And then I will put together a program for the day, and we can spend the day out, wherever you like. If you want to go up high in the hills, that's fine. If you want to stay in the valley bottom, that's fine. If you want to go around town or wherever, we can judge that to suit taste and ability, whether that's physical ability or technical camera ability.
Taking and learning as you go.
Yeah, definitely. And the idea of me having the time to plan is that I can then pick locations that I know will work for what you want to develop. And they've been really successful, actually. I really enjoyed, met some lovely people. We've had some great days out, and they've all gone away, really pleased with what we've done during the day. I've had some great feedback on that, so that's really nice to know that all years of teaching have had some use.
I think you've got a very clear way of teaching, and I have to also, I owe you an apology, Eric, because I conned you onto this by saying it was 20 minutes long. Clearly, way beyond that. This is the longest lockdown lesson we've done.
Really?
But to tell you the truth, I thought the topic deserved it. It is so much to learn. I mean, I know that even in a whole day, you can only really, brush the surface of what somebody might need to know.
And it's just, those days are just really pushing people in the right direction. And then they will then explore something further. And quite often they'll come back to me months down the line and say, okay, so I've done that. I'm happy with that now. What's next?
Yeah. It's progressive, isn't it? It is progressive. As you learn each thing, you can build on it.
Yeah, very much so. Very much so. Like I will learn never to take your word for 20 minutes again, Yeah. And neither will my son, waiting patiently for the laptop. He's been very good. No, I'm sure when he gets bored of it, he'll just put the music on really loud, and that'll be the end of this. So.
Well, we are going to say goodbye now because we've been an hour and 12 so far. Wow. It has been really, really interesting. And I think anybody out there that is interested in any kind of photography needed that kind of extra level of detail. Yeah. So I really appreciate it.
Good. Well, I've really enjoyed it as well. I hope it has been useful to other people beside you, Sam.
I think it will be, and I would like to see more of these on your Facebook page, Eric Pye.
Would you?
All learn little lessons.
Oh, okay. I'll give that some thought.
When you're not out photographing tangerines.
Yeah. It might be bananas this week. I haven't decided.
Bananas. All right, Eric. Well, look, thank you very much indeed. And I'll talk to you very soon. Take care.
Okay. Bye. Bye.